So the session is Commoditization without exploitation, and I'm thinking this is a very challenging time. This is a very challenging time for this discussion, particularly in a post-Irma and other hurricanes period. This last year was an absolutely active and devastating period for Caribbean cultures in the plural, and definitely for the tourism industry. And I'm questioning and interested, Deborah, whose cultures are we thinking of, whose heritage, whose tourism? And I always like to remind us that we've gone beyond a very Eurocentric construct of what culture is, and we're saying that everyone has culture. There's no stratification of culture that we should be working with. Everyone has culture, and symbols of meanings of culture change. Culture is not fixed, it's fluid. And my question to the members in the tourism industry, what are the current symbols of tourism that you're engaging with today? Are you aware of their histories? Should you be moving on, particularly to other images? I want us to remember this convention was passed in 2003. That's 15 years ago. It was a breakthrough convention. Usually, the constructs of culture that have been emulated and toasted are the tangible heritage, the buildings. And we in the region have several buildings, built by the Spanish, built by the English, built by the French. And there are prominent memories. I see that the director of the National Trust is here. The National Trust of the Caribbean love to put the emblems on the walls. We do a lot in Barbados, I'm sure you do in Jamaica. But what this is reminding us of is the intangible culture, and that's what I want to give emphasis in my talk to today. Recognizing grave threats of deterioration, disappearance, destruction of intangible cultural heritage. The words describing the region were idyllic, paradise, white sand beaches, which means, yes, our marketing strategy is working. And then there was this, I'm told now, unfortunate article in the New York Times, where it was more or less declared that the Caribbean is open for business. And it listed every island and where they could go. And so I can understand the need to market the region, but Damocles' sword is hanging over our heads, this question of exploitation. What about the intangible cultures? In a book called The Invention of the Caribbean Picturesque, the book captures all of the various beautiful images for the Caribbean. Derek Walcott, however, comes again, I believe this is the same Nobel Peace Prize speech. He's saying, in the tropics, nothing is lovelier than the allotments to the poor. No theater is as vivid, voluble, and cheap. Are we, that's applicable 25 years later? Are we circling the drain? So if we're thinking of cultural heritage tourism then, it's interesting, Deborah made the same point. Cultural heritage tourism can also create tensions and even conflict, as there is a desire to market the space, and yet we're keeping the 2003 International Convention safeguarding the intangible heritage in mind, and conflicts will arise. So the questions are, whose histories, whose heritage is utilized in creating the tourism narrative? Whose histories and heritage are marginalized? Whose cultures are foregrounded? And what about the intangible cultural heritage? Those are the questions I would love us to have discussions about. I am wrapping up. It ain't where you're from, it's where you're at. Paul Gilroy. So we're speaking to roots and roots. And all of my cultural studies students know this very well. What is identity? Identity is the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. Stories of identity are produced through historical, and I've inserted, and cultural narratives. Who chooses the narrative can be used to mark difference and to exclude, and also can be used to unite. Whose narratives are we selecting? What are the identities that we are constructing within tourism? And it is 2018, and there's this, for example, the 2003 UNESCO Safeguard Intangible Heritage. Are we keeping that in mind as we market the region? Thank you very much.
And when the investor is not making a profit, it then has economic control over our government, over the resort. All they got to say is we're going to close the resort. There's a panic. And so whatever they're looking for, they actually get. And then we in the Caribbean, our wants, our desires, get put on the back burner. I think part of the problem too is very few of us have a national development plan to understand what we want for our destinations. So the national plan should actually say, this is how we see our countries developing. And then the investors that we go looking for fit into our national plan. But it has to be something that we collectively agree on. The challenge you also have is when you change governments, priority change. And so it takes the new government 2 years or so to get up to speed. They got about a year and a half to actually do something. Then they're in election mode. When the government changes, then you're back to the whole cycle again. So I think culture is so important and we keep losing it. Some of our young people have no idea what it is to be Bahamian. And that's kind of distressing. But we have several festivals throughout the Bahamas, and the one that comes to my mind is like Cat Island, the Rake and Scrape Festival, where they're actually taking the rake and scrape culture of the Bahamas and teaching it to the young people. So I think more of that needs to be done, but it has to be done in order for the nation to develop rather than to be a trinket for the tourists to be playing with. I think we need to do it for ourselves and then let the visitors enjoy what we're doing rather than the other way around. I hope that helps.
I'm aware of rake and scrape. That's a brilliant, where's the gentleman? Yes, it's brilliant. What can happen within the hotel industry, for example, as you're training younger generations about these traditions, then they can be those who perform for tourists. And tourists of today's tourists are very interested in youth culture, very interested in global, very interested in traditions. And so it's a way of sharing and preserving simultaneously and not sanitizing, because yes, there have been times, and I am aware, and I've published on this, where sometimes a hotelier may request, oh, we don't want the rake and scrape, that is low culture, common culture, over the hill culture, forget that noise, let's sing something American. I am understanding now, and all of you, if you want to share with me, now the drive is for the local, the drive is for this niche market of what's there, the drive is for cultural heritage, and that is a fantastic. For example, I've been here to watch John Canoe, the performances, and I myself I'm an actor, and I know that when we are performing the thing, we are doing the tradition and we're performing, it is to enforce that as we perform, we are preserving, we are helping with the development and exploring various identities. I presume the rake and scrape communities have the opportunity to work with the hotels within the communities. If there are negotiations, and the benefit there is a push that yes, we need to show value for the artists. But what you can also do is say, yes, we can give you a gig for the whole winter season. If you come, we will make an arrangement that you can come and perform Saturday afternoons or something. That's a way that you can reach out to it. That personable reaching out can happen. Larger hotels just need that. I think all of us can do better. We just need to be aware that we can do better. And that may be just the way to go. So the question of the scale, maybe the larger hotels, such as this, for example, can employ and have vast performances. It's nice to hear that. Smaller hotels, you can have that niche market. And what could happen? Suppose, in the case of rake and scrape, are they within any hotel circuit at the moment? A community, a small hotel can say, well, we guarantee rake and scrape here on such and such a night. You claim the market, and so if your tourist might be some other part of the island, but they'll say there's a rake and scrape at this hotel, we want to go. So it can become part I think we're all responsible citizens, and I think we really, really want to do well with tourism. It's just to be aware of the alternatives instead of what we've been tackling, as you say, 50 years we've woken up and figured that out now. Yeah.